Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's story. The restaurant was bustling with the soft hum of conversation, the clinking of silverware, and the warm glow of the dimmed lights. Each dish on the table looked like a work of art, perfectly presented for the sophisticated clientele who frequented this high-end establishment. But amidst the luxury and polished atmosphere, Emma Brooks felt out of place. As she walked into the grand dining room, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her second-hand dress and scuffed shoes. She had promised Jenny, her best friend, that she would give this blind date a try. And here she was clutching her phone and scanning the room nervously, hoping to find the man she was supposed to meet. Her heart pounded in her chest as she whispered under her breath, "Table 7. Table 7. She spotted a man sitting alone in the back corner, absorbed in his phone. He was sharply dressed, his dark hair neatly styled, and his posture radiated confidence, the kind Emma was not used to seeing. That had to be him. She took a deep breath and made her way toward him, forcing a bright smile on her face. "Hi, you must be Kevin," she said, her voice shaky as she pulled out the chair and sat down across from him. The man looked up at her, startled, blinking in confusion. He seemed to hesitate for a moment, his eyes flicking to the menu as if trying to remember her name. Hi, Emma," he replied, his voice smooth but slightly uncertain. Emma mistook his confusion for shyness. "Blind dates are weird, right?" she added quickly, hoping to break the ice. "Jenny told me you might be a little shy, so don't worry, I can talk enough for both of us." The man paused for a moment, then gave a faint smile, leaning back in his chair. "Right, blind dates are something else," he said, his lips curling into a small, amused grin. Emma laughed nervously, feeling a little more at ease. It was hard not to feel like she was in a different world, one that wasn't meant for her, but she could handle it. She could get through this. As the conversation unfolded, Emma shared stories about her struggles at the diner, the late nights working to pay rent, and the dream of one day opening her own art studio. She tried to keep it light, even though she felt out of place in the sophisticated setting. She had always been honest about her life, even if it wasn't glamorous, and she found herself telling the man across from her about the little things like how she hated the cafeteria food at her shift and how one day, she hoped to escape the grind. The man whose name, she assumed, was Kevin listened patiently, but there was something about him that made her uneasy. He didn't seem like the others she had met, the ones who couldn't wait to talk about their fancy jobs and expensive hobbies. Kevin, or whoever he really was, didn't seem interested in the usual small talk. Just as Emma was about to continue, her phone buzzed in her purse. She checked it quickly, and her heart sank. "Hey, Emma, where are you?" "I'm at table 7, looking forward to meeting you, Kevin." She stared at the message, her face turning crimson. She had sat at the wrong table. Mortified, she looked up at the man across from her, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not Kevin, are you?" The man's smile faltered, and he shook his head. "No, I'm not Kevin," he said, his voice tinged with regret. Emma stood abruptly, her face burning with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she muttered, grabbing her coat. "I really thought you were," she trailed off as she hurried toward the door. She couldn't believe she had done this. Who did that? Who sat down with the wrong person and then ran off like an idiot? She could feel his eyes on her as she fled the restaurant, her heart racing. She didn't know why, but something about him had made her feel something different. Maybe it was just her nerves, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd lost something important. The man, Liam Parker, watched her go. A strange mix of regret and curiosity swirled in his chest. He had intended to correct her from the start, but something about the way she had smiled, so earnestly, had made him pause. He hadn't expected her to run off like that, but as he sat back down in his chair, his thoughts drifted back to their conversation. There was something about her honesty, her straightforwardness, that he hadn't experienced in a long time. He was used to people who spoke in careful, measured tones, who always knew the right things to say. But Emma was different. She had just spoken her truth, nothing more, nothing less. And for some reason, it bothered him in a way he couldn't quite explain. Why did he care so much? It was only after she had disappeared from sight that he realized he didn't want to let her go. There was something about her that felt real. And for the first time in a long while, Liam Parker wasn't sure what to do next. The next morning, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the awkward dinner from the night before. She had no intention of seeing the man again. She had made a fool of herself, sitting at the wrong table and then running off. She tried to focus on her shift at the diner, the familiar hum of the kitchen and clinking plates, but her mind kept drifting back to the strange encounter. What was it about him that had made her feel so connected, even for just a moment? It wasn't like her to feel this way, especially not with someone like him. He was probably just another wealthy guy with no interest in someone like her. Yet, she couldn't help but wonder why she couldn't shake the feeling of regret that had settled in her chest. She wiped the counter, trying to clear her thoughts. She had a life to get back to, and worrying about some guy wasn't going to get her anywhere. But as she reached for the coffee pot, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. The message was from an unknown number. "Hi Emma, it's Liam. I'm the guy from last night. I know it was a mistake, but I'd really like to see you again. Coffee, maybe?" Her heart skipped a beat. Liam. She hadn't expected to hear from him, and yet, here he was, reaching out after everything that happened. She stared at the message for a long time before tapping out a quick reply. "Okay, coffee sounds nice," she typed, trying to sound casual, but her nerves were getting the best of her. She hit send, almost instantly regretting it, but there was something about the message that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a mistake after all. That afternoon, Emma met Liam at a small, quiet coffee shop tucked away from the busy streets. It wasn't as upscale as the restaurant from the night before, but it had a warm, inviting feel to it. The kind of place where you could relax without feeling like you had to impress anyone. She arrived a few minutes early, her nerves making her fidget with the hem of her jacket as she waited. When she saw him walk in, dressed in a simple sweater and jeans, she was relieved. He wasn't wearing a suit or anything too fancy. He looked normal. Or at least, more normal than the man she had met last night. He spotted her immediately and gave a small wave, walking over to her table with a slight smile. "Hey, Emma. Glad you could make it," he said, his voice warm and easy, like nothing had happened the night before. "Yeah, me too," Emma replied, her voice a little shaky despite herself. She motioned to the seat across from her. "I'm sorry about last night. I was just so embarrassed. I really thought you were Kevin." Liam chuckled, sitting down. "It's okay. I think it's kind of funny. Honestly, I thought you were just some random person at first. But I'm glad we're doing this now." He paused, his gaze softening. "I wanted to apologize for not clearing things up right away. I should have said something." "No, it's fine," Emma said quickly. "It was my fault. I don't usually do things like this." She glanced down at her cup of coffee, trying to avoid his eyes for a moment. "I wasn't expecting to meet someone like you." "Someone like me?" Liam asked, raising an eyebrow in curiosity. "Yeah," Emma replied, looking up at him. "Someone with your lifestyle, I guess. You just seem so put together, you know?" She shrugged, feeling a little embarrassed by her own words. "I'm not used to being around people like that." Liam smiled, leaning back in his chair. "You know, it's funny. I thought the same thing when I first met you. You were so different from everyone else I know. You didn't seem to care about all the flashy stuff, and I found that refreshing." Emma couldn't help but feel a little surprised by his honesty. Most people, especially wealthy people, were used to people flattering them, pretending to like them for their money or status. But Liam wasn't doing that. He was just being real. The conversation continued easily after that. They talked about their lives, their dreams, and the things that made them tick. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was talking to someone who actually listened, who cared about what she had to say. She realized that she was starting to like him more than she wanted to admit. After about an hour, they both stood up to leave. "Thanks for meeting me," Liam said, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I had a really good time." "Me too," Emma replied, smiling back at him. She felt a warmth spread through her chest as they exchanged a quick, but meaningful, glance. As they walked out of the cafe, Emma found herself wondering if maybe she had misjudged him. Maybe he wasn't just another rich guy looking for a fling. Maybe there was more to him. And maybe, just maybe, there was more to this strange connection between them. The day after that, Liam couldn't get Emma off his mind. He had expected to forget about her after the awkward dinner, but something about her stuck with him. Her honesty, her warmth, it was unlike anything he had experienced before. He knew he needed to see her again. He couldn't explain why, but the thought of not seeing her felt like a mistake. He decided to send her a message, hoping she'd agree to meet him again. It wasn't the most conventional way to start a relationship, but he wasn't looking for conventional. He wanted something real. The following week, Emma couldn't believe how quickly things had changed. She had been cautious, even skeptical, about seeing Liam again. After their coffee date, she figured he'd just be another rich guy who had a moment of genuine interest but would eventually fade out. But instead, he kept texting her. And he didn't just send simple, polite messages. No, Liam was different. He asked about her day, about her art, about her dreams. Each message made her feel like he was actually paying attention, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Despite herself, Emma found herself looking forward to his messages. They weren't just typical, "How's your day?" texts, they were real conversations. It wasn't long before Liam invited her to another event, but this time it was different. "I have a work event this weekend," he texted her one afternoon, "I'd love for you to join me. It's a fundraiser for a cause I'm really passionate about. It'll be a bit fancy, but I promise it'll be worth it." "What do you say?" Emma hesitated. A fundraiser? A high society event? She wasn't sure if she was ready for that world, but at the same time, she didn't want to turn him down. She couldn't explain it, but she felt something pulling her toward him, something stronger than her usual doubts. After a moment's thought, she replied, "Okay, I'll go. But no promises, I won't embarrass myself." Liam laughed, and Emma felt her anxiety ease a little. The fact that he found her awkwardness endearing made her feel a bit better about stepping out of her comfort zone. The night of the fundraiser, Emma stood in front of her mirror, debating what to wear. She didn't own anything nearly as expensive as the gowns she had seen in the pictures of these kinds of events, but she had a simple dress that, while not flashy, made her feel confident. She put on a pair of comfortable heels and did her best with her hair and makeup, trying to look the part without overthinking it. When she arrived at the venue, Emma was immediately overwhelmed by the opulence of the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft, glowing light over the polished floors and the elegantly dressed guests. She felt like she didn't belong here, her dress suddenly feeling too plain, her shoes too modest. But then she saw Liam. He was talking to a group of people near the entrance, but as soon as his eyes met hers, he excused himself and walked over to her with that same warm smile that had drawn her in from the very beginning. "Emma, you look amazing," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I'm so glad you came." She smiled, relieved by his genuine compliment. "Thank you. This is a lot," she admitted, gesturing to the room around them. "I wasn't sure if I was going to survive the night without making a complete fool of myself." Liam chuckled softly, his gaze never leaving hers. "Don't worry about it. Just be yourself. That's all I ask." He reached out, taking her hand in his as they walked together toward the event's main area. As the night went on, Emma started to relax. Liam introduced her to several people, most of whom were polite but distant. They were the types of people who valued appearances more than anything else, but they treated her with respect, mostly because of Liam's presence. Despite the wealth and power that seemed to hang in the air, Emma found herself talking to a few guests, laughing at some of their stories, and even discussing her dreams of opening her own art studio. Liam stayed by her side, occasionally stepping away for a few moments to talk business, but he always came back with a smile, checking in with her, making sure she was okay. By the time the event was winding down, Emma felt surprisingly at ease. She had expected to feel like an outsider, but instead, she found herself enjoying the conversations, even if they were far removed from her usual life. There was something about the way Liam made her feel like she mattered, like her thoughts were worth something in a room full of high-profile guests. As they stood near the exit, preparing to leave, Liam turned to her, his expression soft. "I'm really glad you came tonight," he said quietly. "It means more to me than you know." "I'm glad I came too," Emma replied, her voice sincere. "I didn't think I'd fit in here, but, with you, I felt like I belonged. Like I wasn't just some outsider." Liam smiled, a look of relief crossing his face. "You don't ever have to feel that way with me," he said. "You belong here, with me, and with anyone who values honesty and realness." "I like that about you, Emma." Her heart fluttered at his words, and for the first time in a long time Emma felt like she was part of something more than just a fleeting moment. She didn't know where things would go between them, but for now, she was willing to follow wherever this connection would lead. The drive back to her apartment was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence. As she sat in the car, glancing out the window, she realized that she wasn't thinking about the event or the people there. She was thinking about Liam, about how different he seemed from anyone else she had ever met, and how, for once, she felt like maybe just maybe this wasn't some crazy mistake after all. When they reached her apartment, Liam turned to her, giving her a small smile. "I'll see you again soon, right?" "Of course," Emma replied, her voice warm. "I'd like that." The days following the event passed in a blur, but Emma couldn't help but think about Liam. She had never imagined herself being so caught up in someone else's world. Their coffee date had turned into something more, and their connection had only grown since then. They spent time together whenever they could, whether it was having lunch at a small cafe or chatting on the phone late into the night. Liam was thoughtful, kind, and genuine. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt like she was exactly where she needed to be, with someone who cared for her, not because of her circumstances, but because of who she was. But even as things between them grew stronger, Emma couldn't shake the nagging feeling that it was all too good to be true. Liam was a CEO of the wealthiest men she'd ever met. And she? She was still working long hours at the diner, struggling to make ends meet. She tried not to think about the difference in their lives, but it was always there, lingering in the back of her mind. She was still the girl in the second-hand dress, the one who didn't belong in a world like his. One evening, Liam invited her to dinner at his penthouse. Emma hesitated. She had been to upscale restaurants before, but this was different. This was his home. She had never been inside such a luxurious place, and the thought of walking into it made her nervous. What if she said or did something wrong? What if she embarrassed herself? But Liam had been nothing but kind, and she had to admit she was excited to see him again. When Emma arrived, Liam greeted her at the door with a warm smile and a kiss on the cheek. "You look stunning," he said, and Emma felt her heart skip a beat. She had chosen a simple black dress, one she thought was appropriate for the occasion, but his compliment made her feel beautiful, like she actually belonged here. They sat down to a delicious dinner, and the conversation flowed easily between them. They laughed about their awkward first meeting, talked about their favorite movies, and even shared personal stories. Emma was amazed at how comfortable she felt around him. It didn't feel like she was trying to fit into a world she didn't belong to. It felt real. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she realized how much she had come to care about him. After dinner, they moved to the living room, where Liam poured them each a glass of wine. The view from his penthouse was breathtaking, the city lights sparkling in the distance. "You know," Liam began, his voice soft, "I never thought I'd meet someone like you. You make everything seem easier, more enjoyable. It's like you remind me of what really matters." Emma looked at him, a little surprised. "I don't know about that," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just me. I don't belong in your world." Liam took a step closer to her, his eyes intense. "That's where you're wrong. You belong here. You belong with me. Don't you see that?" His words were sincere, and for the first time Emma believed him. She had always felt like an outsider in the circles Liam moved in, but standing here in his arms, looking out at the city, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she had a place in his world after all. As the night went on, they talked more, and Emma found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone else. She told him about her childhood, her struggles, her dreams. Liam listened, not with pity, but with genuine interest. He didn't judge her for her past or her humble beginnings. He accepted her, flaws and all. But despite the connection they shared, Emma still had doubts. Liam was everything she wasn't: eccentric, powerful, successful. And she was still the girl who worked long hours at a diner just to make ends meet. She had worked hard for everything she had, but could she ever really be enough for someone like him? As the evening came to a close, Liam walked her to the door. He held her hand, looking at her with a mixture of affection and something deeper, something more serious. "I know you're scared," he said, his voice low. "But I need you to trust me. We don't have to figure everything out right now, but I want you to know that I'm in this for real." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She had never been good at trusting people, especially when they came from a world so different from hers. But in that moment, standing in front of him, she realized that maybe it was time to let go of her fears and allow herself to feel something real. "I trust you," she whispered, looking into his eyes. "I just don't know if I'm ready for all of this yet." Liam smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't have to be ready right now. Just take things one step at a time with me. I'll be here." As she left his penthouse that night, Emma couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. She knew her life was changing, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for the kind of change Liam was offering. But one thing was for sure: she was starting to believe that maybe she could have a future with him. Maybe, just maybe, she could belong in his world after all. Over the next few days, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Liam. The more time they spent together, the more she realized how much she had come to care for him. But with those growing feelings came the familiar insecurities she had always carried. She had spent her whole life working hard just to get by, and now she was standing next to a man who seemed to have everything she didn't. He was successful, powerful, and had a world of opportunities at his fingertips. Meanwhile, she was still waiting tables at a diner, struggling to pay her bills and keep her head above water. Emma tried to push these thoughts aside whenever they were together, focusing instead on the connection they shared. She would spend hours with him, whether it was at his penthouse, taking walks in the park, or even just sitting at his favorite coffee shop. But every time they parted ways, the doubts would creep back in. Could she ever really fit into his life? And would he ever see her as more than just a temporary distraction from his high society world? One afternoon, as Emma was working her shift, her phone buzzed. She stepped into the break room to check the message. It was from Liam. "I know you've been busy, but I was hoping we could talk tonight. There's something I need to tell you." Emma's heart raced. What could he possibly need to tell her? She wasn't sure whether to be excited or nervous, but the curiosity was too much. She quickly typed back. "Of course, I'll be there." Later that evening, Emma arrived at Liam's penthouse. He was waiting for her by the window, staring out at the city lights. When he turned to face her, his expression was serious, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on?" Emma asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "You look like something's bothering you." Liam took a deep breath and motioned for her to sit next to him. "It's just. I don't want you to think I'm rushing things, he said, his voice softer than usual. But the truth is, I don't want to keep hiding who I am or what I'm thinking. I've been falling for you, Emma. I didn't want to admit it at first, but I can't keep pretending like it's not happening. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had known that things were growing between them, but hearing him say it out loud made it all the more real. She looked down, unsure of what to say next. Was she ready for this? Could she handle the idea of being with someone who had so much more than she did? I don't know what to say, she admitted quietly. I care about you too, but I don't want to end up just being some fling. I'm not like the women you usually date. I'm not polished or rich or connected. Liam reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I don't care about any of that. I care about you. I don't want to be with someone because of their money or status. I want to be with you because of who you are. Emma swallowed hard, her mind racing. She wanted to believe him, but there was a part of her that couldn't quite shake the doubt. But what if I'm not enough? What if I can't fit into your world, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam's eyes softened as he leaned in closer. You don't have to fit into my world, Emma. You already belong in it. And if you ever need time to figure things out, that's okay, too. I'm not going anywhere. I want this to be real, but I need you to trust me. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she believed him. She had been holding herself back for so long, afraid that if she let herself feel too much, she'd only end up hurt. But Liam wasn't like the others. He wasn't looking at her like some trophy or a means to an end. He was looking at her like she was the only person who mattered. And in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to let herself fall. I trust you, she said, her voice steady now. I want this, too. The tension between them melted away, and for the rest of the evening, they simply enjoyed each other's company. They talked, laughed, and shared a quiet intimacy that made Emma feel like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But even as she embraced the feeling of being with Liam, Emma couldn't ignore the nagging thought in the back of her mind. She had seen the way people in Liam's world looked at her. She was still the waitress, still the girl from a small town with no connections. Could she really survive in this world, or was she just a passing moment for Liam? As the night came to an end, Liam walked her to the door, his hand gently brushing hers. I'll see you tomorrow, he asked softly. Emma smiled, her heart racing as she nodded. Yes. I'll be here. But as she left the penthouse, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something about this relationship that was both everything she wanted and everything she feared. What would happen when the world she had built for herself collided with the life Liam had waiting for him? The days passed, and Emma's life seemed to be shifting in ways she hadn't expected. She had always lived on the edge of uncertainty, always one paycheck away from a crisis, always fighting to stay afloat. But now, with Liam, she found herself in a space where things felt different. He was everything she had never dared dream of, and yet, there were moments when she questioned if she was the kind of woman he truly wanted by his side. He had opened up to her, shared his deepest thoughts, and yet she still felt like she was walking on the edge, afraid of what might happen if she fully embraced the life he was offering. One evening, after a quiet dinner at Liam's penthouse, Emma was getting ready to leave. She was standing by the door, her hand on the handle, when Liam suddenly spoke. Wait. She turned around, looking at him, her heart beating faster than usual. What is it? She asked, her voice a little shaky, unsure of what he was about to say. Liam walked toward her, his expression serious but soft. I know this is moving fast, but I can't ignore how I feel about you, he said. I don't want to just be with you because of our shared moments or the way things feel right now. I want to build something real with you. Something lasting. But I need to know you feel the same way. Emma froze for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Her heart ached with the weight of his words. She had known that things between them had been progressing, but to hear him say it out loud made everything feel more intense. Her mind flashed to all the doubts she had been carrying. She had been trying so hard to keep herself guarded, afraid that if she allowed herself to truly feel, she would only be disappointed in the end. I do care about you, Liam, she said finally, her voice almost a whisper. But I need to be honest with you. I'm not like the women you're used to being with. I don't come from your world, and I don't have the kind of life that matches the kind of life you have. Liam reached out, gently taking her hand in his. Emma, I don't care about any of that. What I care about is you. Who you are. I'm not asking you to change or to fit into my world. I'm asking you to be with me. Because I want you by my side, not because of where we come from, but because of what we share. Emma felt her heart swell at his words. She had always believed that love, or any real connection, would require her to change, to become someone else to fit into a world that wasn't her own. But here was Liam, offering her the exact opposite. He wasn't asking her to fit in, he was asking her to be herself. But still, a voice in the back of her mind kept whispering doubts. Could this really work? Could she be the woman he needed in his life, knowing the stark differences in their backgrounds? Her mind raced with the possibilities. What if this was just a phase for him? What if, eventually, he grew tired of her, the waitress from a small town? Could she survive in his world, where everyone seemed so polished, so perfect? She looked up at Liam, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt. And what about you? Are you sure you want this? Us, she asked, her voice shaking slightly with vulnerability. Liam's expression softened as he smiled at her. I'm sure, he said firmly. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The sincerity in his eyes made Emma's heart flutter. She could see that he wasn't playing games, that he meant what he said. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't just chasing something impossible. She was standing on the edge of something real, something that could change her life forever. With a deep breath, she stepped toward him, closing the distance between them. Okay, she said quietly. Let's see where this takes us. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she thought about everything that had happened. She had been afraid of falling for someone like Liam, afraid that it would never work, that their differences would tear them apart. But as she drifted off to sleep, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she had been wrong to doubt. She wasn't just a girl from a small town anymore, she was someone worthy of love, someone who could be a part of Liam's world, and he was someone who truly cared for her, flaws and all. The next morning, Emma woke up to a message from Liam. It was simple, but it made her smile. I'm looking forward to today. With you. The next few days felt like a dream to Emma. Each moment with Liam seemed to grow more meaningful, more intimate. He was everything she had ever wanted, kind, genuine, and thoughtful. They spent their time together talking, laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. He was opening up in ways Emma never expected, sharing more about his life, his struggles, and his hopes for the future. And with each new layer of honesty, Emma felt herself falling deeper into this relationship, even as her doubts lingered at the edge of her mind. But despite the warmth between them, there was still a voice inside her telling her to be careful. She had always been the one who worked hard for everything she had, never relying on anyone else. She had built her life on her own terms, and she was afraid that, one day, she would lose herself in Liam's world. She couldn't ignore the fact that he was a billionaire, a man with a life that seemed so far removed from hers. Could she really fit into his world without losing who she was? One evening, after a quiet dinner at Liam's penthouse, Emma was lost in her thoughts as they sat on the couch, sipping wine. The city lights outside the window painted the room with a soft glow, and for a moment, she felt like time had stopped. Liam, who had been casually flipping through a magazine, noticed the distant look in her eyes. What's on your mind? Liam asked, setting the magazine aside and turning his full attention to her. His voice was gentle, the concern in his eyes evident. Emma hesitated. She didn't want to burden him with her insecurities, but she couldn't keep pretending that everything was perfect when she still had so many unanswered questions. I've just been thinking, she said slowly, her voice quiet. About us. About where this is going. Liam's expression softened, and he moved closer to her. You don't have to worry about anything, Emma, he said, taking her hand in his. I've never been more sure about anything in my life. I want you in my life, for real. No more doubts, no more second guessing. Emma looked down at their intertwined hands, feeling a mixture of comfort and uncertainty. But what about your world, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Your life is so different from mine. I don't know if I belong in it. I don't know if I can fit in. Liam squeezed her hand, his grip reassuring. You don't have to fit into my world. You don't need to change who you are for me, Emma. I'm not looking for someone to fit in. I'm looking for someone who's real, someone who challenges me, someone who makes me feel like I'm not just living in a world of money and power. I want you, just as you are. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She had never expected someone like Liam to feel this way about her, to accept her without trying to change her. His words washed over her like a wave, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to truly believe that she was worthy of love, worthy of being with someone like him. But even as the doubt in her heart began to fade, a new fear started to rise within her. The closer she got to Liam, the more she felt the weight of their differences. What if one day, their worlds collided in a way that couldn't be fixed? What if the differences between them were too much to overcome? Are you sure about this? She asked softly, her voice tinged with hesitation. Are you really sure you want to be with someone like me? Liam didn't hesitate for a second. He lifted her chin, so she would look him in the eye. I'm more sure than I've ever been about anything, he said, his voice steady and confident. You are everything I never knew I needed, Emma. And I want to spend my life with you. Emma felt her heart swell at his words, her worries melting away for the moment. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, or if she was ready for everything that came with being with someone like Liam. But right now, in this moment, she knew one thing: she didn't want to let him go. With a soft smile, Emma leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace surround her. Okay, she whispered, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. Let's take this one step at a time. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be, right there with Liam, ready to face whatever the future held together. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Emma. She and Liam grew closer with every passing moment, their connection deepening in ways she hadn't expected. They spent more time together, and every time they were apart, Emma found herself missing him. But despite the growing closeness, Emma couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was about to go wrong. She kept wondering if this was just some fantasy, a beautiful dream she would eventually wake up from, only to find herself back in the harsh reality of her life. She had grown accustomed to disappointment, and now, with Liam, she was afraid of getting her hopes up too high. One evening, they sat together in Liam's living room, talking about their future plans. Emma had never imagined that she would be in this position, talking about the future with someone like Liam. He was everything she had never thought she could have. He had a life filled with luxury, power, and success, and she was still working at the diner, struggling to make ends meet. How could someone like her possibly fit into his world? Yet, there she was, sitting on his couch, sharing her hopes and dreams with him. Liam leaned back, his arm resting casually on the arm of the couch. I've been thinking a lot about what comes next, he said, his voice steady, but there was something different in his tone. Emma looked at him, her heart racing a little. She didn't know why, but something about his expression made her nervous. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam turned toward her, his eyes soft and searching. I mean us, he said. I want this to be real, Emma. I want us to build something together. I don't want you to feel like you're in a world that's too different from yours. I want to make it work, no matter what. Emma felt her breath catch in her throat. She had heard Liam speak of the future before, but there was something in his words now that felt like a promise. She had never been good at trusting people, and here she was, ready to take a leap of faith with him. But even as her heart told her to trust him, her mind kept reminding her of all the ways things could go wrong. I want that too, she said, her voice trembling slightly. But I'm scared. I'm scared of what this might mean for me. For us. I don't know if I can fit into your life, Liam. I don't know if I can keep up with everything that comes with being with you. Liam's face softened, and he reached for her hand. Emma, you don't have to keep up. You don't have to be anyone other than who you are. I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to trust me, to trust us. I know we're different, but I truly believe that we're better together. Emma felt her heart swell at his words. There it was again, his sincerity, his belief in her. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that, how much she needed to feel like she wasn't alone in this. I want to trust you, she said quietly. I really do. But I'm scared. What if one day, we wake up, and we realize that this everything we've built isn't enough? Liam gave her a small, reassuring smile, his thumb brushing gently over her hand. We won't know unless we try, he said softly. I'm not going anywhere, Emma. And I hope you'll stay with me, no matter where this goes. For a moment, Emma just stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what the future held for them. But in that moment, she realized that she didn't need to know everything right now. She only needed to trust him, to trust herself, and to take one step forward together. Okay, she whispered, her voice steady now. I'm ready. As she looked into his eyes, she felt the weight of her fears begin to lift, replaced by something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. And for the first time in her life, Emma felt like maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she truly belonged. Weeks passed, and Emma slowly began to feel more at ease in her relationship with Liam. They had taken their time, growing closer with each day, each conversation. Emma had found herself letting go of her old fears, trusting Liam more and more as the days went by. It wasn't always easy, but every time she started to doubt herself, Liam was there to reassure her, reminding her that she didn't have to fit into his world. She already belonged with him, exactly as she was. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of Liam's penthouse, looking out over the city lights, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. They had talked about everything from their childhoods to their dreams for the future. Liam had shared his hopes for his company, and Emma had finally started opening up about her own dreams of starting an art studio. They were no longer two people from completely different worlds. They had found common ground in their love for each other, and in their shared desire to build something meaningful. Liam, who had been quiet for a moment, turned to her, his expression serious yet gentle. There's something I've been thinking about, he said, his voice soft but full of intention. Emma turned to face him, her heart skipping a beat. What is it? She asked, sensing the shift in the air. Liam took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving hers. I've been falling for you, Emma, he said, his words steady but filled with emotion. And I know we've already talked about this, but I need to ask you something. I want us to build a life together. A real life. Not just these small moments, but something that lasts. Will you marry me? Emma's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The question hung in the air, the weight of it heavy and full of promise. She had always been afraid of commitment, of losing herself in someone else's world. But now, with Liam, everything felt different. She wasn't losing herself, she was gaining something. Something real. Something beautiful. She looked at him, her mind racing, but her heart knew the answer before she could even speak. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Yes, I'll marry you. Liam's face lit up with a smile that could have lit up the entire city. He reached for her hand, holding it tightly as if to make sure she was really there, that this moment wasn't some dream he'd wake up from. I'm so glad, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I promise you, Emma, I'll make you happy. I'll do everything I can to build a life with you, no matter what. Emma smiled, feeling a tear slip down her cheek. It was a tear of joy, of relief, of hope for the future. I believe you, she said softly, her voice filled with certainty. And I promise I'll be with you, through everything. We'll build this life together. In that moment, surrounded by the glow of the city lights and the warmth of Liam's embrace, Emma knew that she had found something special, something that she would never take for granted. She had found a love that was real, a love that would endure the tests of time. And as Liam held her close, she realized that this was just the beginning of their journey together, one that would be filled with challenges, but also with the promise of a love that would never fade. And so, as they sat there, looking out over the city, Emma knew that no matter what the future held, she was ready to face it, side by side with Liam, the man who had shown her that sometimes, the most unexpected things can lead to the most beautiful of journeys.